Gonna have to put out a bit of a disclaimer here. I'm not claiming that 9/11 was an inside job. I am merely pointing out the inconsistencies with the official narrative, and I do not wish to become an enemy of the state. I'm a staunch supporter of the American intelligence apparatus, as stated, and I understand that sometimes false flags are a necessary evil in the pursuit of world domination, although it did bother me quite a bit that my TikTok account was banned shortly after posting a slew of 9/11 alternative theory evidence, and verified true information was taken down as misinformation and violent extremism. But here it is, 9/11, the ultimate rabbit hole, how the deep state triggered the 21st century. Too many coincidences, too few answers. When evidence gets buried and truth becomes treason, it's not conspiracy, it's control. It wasn't just an attack, it was a template. 9/11 built the world we live in: surveillance, war, fear, obedience. And let's start with some of the basic inconsistencies. First off, we have the mysterious collapse of World Trade Center Building Number 7. This 47-story skyscraper fell in perfect free fall without being hit by a plane, and there was a discovery of military-grade nanothermetic residue in the debris, which is the exact material used in military explosives. We have NORAD's impossible mission failures and an eerily similar training exercise called Operation Vigilant Guardian. There's the Pentagon's missing $2.3 trillion announced by Donald Rumsfeld just one day before the attacks, and the plane crashing into the exact accounting wing of the Pentagon. We have Alex Jones and Bill Cooper predicting the attack 2 months beforehand in July, saying that planes will fly into the World Trade Center and they are going to blame a man named Osama bin Laden, who was a known CIA asset in the 80s. There's also Bill Cooper's subsequent shootout with the FBI and his death the following week, said to be related to tax evasion charges. That makes a lot of sense. I'm sure one of the biggest conspiracy names of all time in William Milton Cooper, who wrote Behold a Pale Horse, just so happened to die because of tax evasion charges from years ago, a couple weeks after 9/11, right as he was on a media rampage talking about how it was an inside job. There's Barry Jennings, the World Trade Center 7 witness who reported explosions in the building before either tower collapsed. He died under mysterious circumstances before the release of the NIST report that contradicted his testimony, and Sybil Edmonds, an FBI translator that was subject to gag orders with claims of state secret privileges to silence her testimony. There was a BBC reporter who was on site in New York who announced that World Trade Center 7 building had fallen 20 minutes before it actually fell. That's a bizarre one. There's the infamous 28 pages redacted from the 9/11 Commission report that detailed Saudi intelligence connections to the hijackers, including financial support, safe houses, and operational assistance, effectively showing that there was a U.S.-based support network. Specifically, Saudi intelligence agent Omar al-Bayoumi confirmed helped the hijackers, and yes, it was once a conspiracy to say the Saudis, our greatest ally in the Middle East, played a role, and now we know that for sure. 60 Minutes did a good segment on the Saudi implications in 9/11. There is the Carlyle Group meeting with Shafiq bin Laden, Osama's brother, and George Bush the morning of 9/11. Yes, it's true. George Bush met with Osama bin Laden's brother the morning of 9/11 at the Ritz-Carlton in D.C. You can't make this shit up. Not to mention the picture of George Bush with the fallen Jenga towers on Epstein Island. There's Bush and Clinton mistakenly mentioning explosives in interviews and years after about 9/11. Look it up. They both mention explosives when talking about 9/11. There's an Israeli messaging company, Odigo, that warned of imminent terrorist attacks on U.S. soil hours before on the morning of 9/11. There is the Project for a New American Century, aka PNAC. They called for a new Pearl Harbor to justify military expansion in a September 2000 report called Rebuilding America's Defenses. And yes, about 3,000 American lives were lost in both Pearl Harbor and 9/11. And so, aside from the actual inconsistencies in the storyline, we must look at the larger picture of 9/11 profiteering. We have subsequent wars in Afghanistan and Iraq that caused Dick Cheney's oil company Halliburton to absolutely surge. There's Larry Silverstein's perfect timing with insurance purchases to reap billions in profit from the attacks. There's stock market manipulation that suggests foreknowledge and anonymous financial insiders shorting American and United Airlines just day before the attacks. The insane levels of opium production in Afghanistan under American occupation in the decades following 9/11. The companies like Lockheed Martin, Boeing, Raytheon, and General Dynamics reaped hundreds of billions in profits from the war on terror that 9/11 justified. The Carlyle Group, with its deep connections to both the Bush and bin Laden families, exemplified this incestuous relationship between government officials and defense profiteers. The surveillance industrial complex also emerged as a new profit center, with companies like Booz Allen Hamilton, the SAIC, receiving billions in contracts for domestic spying programs that justified by the terrorist threat. And the Patriot Act, which was signed alarmingly quickly after 9/11, was not just an assault on civil liberties, it was a business plan for the intelligence community's private contractors. And the results in the Middle East speak for themselves. Iraq completely destroyed on fabricated WMD evidence. Libya obliterated and turned into a failed state. Syria destabilized through proxy warfare. Afghanistan occupied for 20 plus years while opium production increased 40-fold. Every conflict tended to serve the same purpose as Nazi expansion, eliminating resistant nations, securing resources for the imperial core, and traumatizing populations into submission. The human cost, over 1 million dead in Iraq alone, was completely irrelevant compared to the geopolitical control achieved through what Nazi theorist Carl Schmitt would have recognized as perfectly executed states of exception. And so 23 years after that fateful morning, the official story has crumbled under the weight of scientific evidence, whistleblower testimony, and declassified documents that reveal a pattern of foreknowledge, deliberate inaction, and systematic cover-up that extends to the highest levels of government. Shout out the new wave of third-party media and Tucker Carlson for doing his deep dive on 9/11. As more people start to do their own research, it's going to become overwhelmingly clear that the United States government played a role in the falling of the Twin Towers.